Hello everybody and welcome to Your Gov Non-Part, Political Science and Government for Everyone. And I'm hoping that most of you at this point at least have the rudimentaries that there are three branches to the federal government: the executive, the judiciary, and the legislative. Well, we're here today to talk about the judicial. And we're here in front of the United States Supreme Court building in downtown Washington, D.C. And I wanted to talk about the fact that at the formation of our country, when the Supreme Court was established under the Constitution, appeals up through the Supreme Court were considered a right. Well, through the years, we've had the Judicial Act of 1891, then the Judicial Act of 1925, and finally the United States Supreme Court Case Selection Law of 1989. And what these laws did was to turn over much of what was the caseload from the Supreme Court to an appellate court, so that the lower court could hear it, because there's only the one Supreme Court. It's the 9 people who all serve on one court, and they can only hear so many cases. So with the advent of the growth of the United States, it became overwhelming. So today, under the current law, the United States Supreme Court is the court of last resort. It's the court of highest appeal, if you will. But you aren't given an automatic right to appeal to the Supreme Court. You have to have exhausted all other courts first, and then you petition the Supreme Court with a document called a writ of certiorari. Now, writ means order, order, and certiorari is to inform. So you would petition for a writ of certiorari, and if the petition is granted, the Supreme Court will issue actually the writ to the lower court, which is an order demanding all the records from the case be delivered up to them. Now, the Supreme Court hears a lot of appeals cases, but the biggest function that they probably provide here in the United States, and certainly one that we're most familiar with, is determining whether a particular law is constitutional. Now, they don't just review every law that's passed by a governing body. What they will do is when it's contested and it's gone through the court system, it then is brought here, and they will determine at that point whether that law meets the criterion set down by the United States Constitution. Now, the Supreme Court is also the court of primary jurisdiction in a few rare cases. An example of this would be between two states, where litigation is brought by one state in the Union against another state. This is typically over a dispute about land or water rights, border disputes between states, and that is where the case would be heard in the Supreme Court first. They are the court of original jurisdiction when it comes to states suing other states. So there is a small differentiation between those two functions of the United States Supreme Court. Now, hopefully you all know that the Supreme Court is made up of 9 justices, 8 associate justices, and a chief justice. I'm not going to list those all here right now. That's something you can easily look up. But they have a backlog of cases that can be years long. And this is why a case has to be petitioned to the Supreme Court, because there's so many cases that often those petitions aren't necessarily just denied. Sometimes the order is given back to the appellate court to retry the case or re-examine the information, the evidence of the case, to go back over it. So it's not an automatic, if you send it to them and they don't want to hear it, that they'll necessarily just deny the petition. They can turn it back and order the lower court to go ahead and re-examine the information used in the trial. So that's about it here, what I wanted to tell you in front of the United States Supreme Court. I'd like to thank you for joining us here on Your Gov Non-Part. If you haven't already, I encourage you to pick subscribe and come along for the process of the United States government and all of the things that have to do with political science here. If you got questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section below. I'll try to get back to you. And as always, thank you for watching.